Welcome back to another episode of Methanol Madness presented by Ruapuna Speedway. You join us here tonight for our final show of the season where we're going to wrap up the happenings of our 2025 Ruapuna Speedweek. To get the show started, as always, we're going to kick off with our Concut Crash of the week. This one here is from the TQ racing involving Olivia Stewart going up and over there. AJ Marty Knight involved as well. That one started a wee bit further back on the track as we can catch in some of the slow motion action, but another pretty big ride for Olivia there.
Yeah, it was a wild ride for Olivia and dead set right. Looks like Marty Knight just took a little bit of contact from the car trailing and moved him up the track, left Olivia with nowhere to go, and that's all she wrote. Got some height out of that one too.
It's been a pretty rough first season in TQs for Olivia, but she's certainly making great pace in just her rookie year as well, so great to see her improving in all of her racing. Well, we finished off the race season in style with our second edition of Ruapuna Speedweek, hosting 4 race meetings for over 120 competitors, all 5 of our classes and countless events giving everyone something to hunt. AJ, a massive effort for Speedweek once again, but I think we pulled it off.
Yeah, huge effort and, sort of once again we just avoided the worst of the weather that sort of does come in this time of the year, but I think it's just building momentum, gathering support and making a big name for itself, and I think Speedweek will be here to stay.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a look at some of the racing that took place over the 4 nights now with our Ruapuna Speedway review of the week. A few appearances over the week for the quarter midgets, starting with the Mike Greer Holmes Nelson series on Friday night, which Laken Thompson picked up his first Ruapuna feature win. And then they moved on to Saturday night where they contested for their best pairs with Brodie Morris and Isabella Hendry picking up the win. A couple of really good events for them to start off the week, AJ.
Great for the kids, especially the nights that have got a little bit more sort of prestige about them, and the kids certainly deserve their spot on the program, and gee, there's some amazing talent out there just starting to really sort of come through the ranks, and the future looks brilliant for open wheel speedway racing.
And this season's success continued for Jackson Clark on the final night of Ruapuna's season as well, as he picked up another feature win. He celebrated a 1-2 finish with Ryan Gallagher there with some donuts as well. Someone else that's really impressed me in the quarter midgets over this entire season, AJ, has been Georgia Lewis.
Georgia's picked up a lot of pace and momentum as the season's gone on, and it's a bit of a shame that she probably won't be in the quarters next season, but one thing I've noticed at the vintage speedway days, she's been getting into older sprint cars and older midget cars and that, and Georgia knows how to crank the wheel, that's for sure.
Great fun to see her and her dad competing in the front end challenge that we hosted later on in Speedweek as well. There were also a few drivers that had some pretty nasty tumbles over the week. Carter O'Brien and Jack McMillan faring the worst of those ones, but they are all on the mend and we wish them well and hope to see them back next season as well. The TQs then took to the stage twice over Speedweek with Dylan Cook off to a good start all the way from the North Island. He picked up 2 heat wins on their first Saturday night, which pushed him and Marty Knight to win their best pairs. And we're glad to see that Aaron Finlay's doing okay after he had a pretty nasty crash there too. They then contested the Melrose Motorsports TQ20 for their final show of the year on the final Saturday, with a great performance from many of them throughout the night with their heat races and then that 20-lap feature. Brooke Clark had a great showing, leading a few laps there until Caden Barker and Dylan Cook were coming along, but Marty Knight and Logan Scammell were right at the front of that field as well until Cameron Soul came into the mix there. AJ, there was lots going on at the front of that pack towards there with plenty of them moving throughout the field, but ultimately Cameron Soul taking out the win. Yeah,
how good for Cameron Soul too, and that's something I do like about the TQ20 lapper, highest points start off the back, and what a confidence booster it is for some of these other drivers, whether they lead 1 lap or 10 laps or 15 or whatever, to actually just get an opportunity to run at the front, get the feel of it. And I was absolutely stoked for Cameron Soul because he's one of those guys that turns up and does his thing, and there's nothing flashy about his driving, but he's very consistent. And how good to see him pull into victory lane. Yeah, especially Logan Scammell in that podium position as well. Really couldn't have been a more well-deserved result for a couple of those guys. And also the crash of the week featuring on our social media pages, AJ, a big one for Lockie Brett. Yeah, it was big, it was nasty too. And no wonder Lockie was a little unstable on his shanks as he got out of that one, because it got a lot of velocity about it too. And probably a good thing it happened at the end of the season if it was ever going to happen. But what a great season that Lockie has had, and a real emerging star of the Speedway.
Yeah, most definitely. We also had the modified sprint class racing over Speedweek as well. Friday night was also their best pairs event, with visiting driver from the North Island, Nathan Jeffries, and Chris McCloy winning the best pairs there. Saturday night saw TQ rising star Caden Barker get his first podium in the class, finishing third to race winner Luke Cook and second place Harry McIntyre. Luke's first win in just his rookie season, an amazing result for them as well.
Yeah, just reward, because those guys, they go about their business, and the modified sprint class is so competitive. And I think that what's really good about it is that they found a nice wee spot as part of the Speed Week as well. And maybe that's the platform for the future for the likes of the Modified Sprint Clay Cup. Make it the big shootout for everyone. Give everyone a taste of the cake.
Absolutely. So Thursday night was the time for their annual Avon Insurance Modified Sprint Clay Cup, one of their highly contested events of the season. And you could certainly tell with the driving that something big was on the line. There were some very intense heat battles that night, including a last lap pass that Liam put on Harry McIntyre. He said in his heat race interview, AJ, that he didn't even know that it was the white flag that had come out. So for him to be able to pick up that win on a treacherous track, and they had sunstrike and all sorts of things going on, and lap cars that kind of held Harry back a little bit and gave Liam that advantage to make the pass.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have loved to have seen Harry sort of pull into victory lane on that one, but you're dead right. They were up against it, because the modified sprints love a track that's smooth, chain drive and all that sort of stuff in the wing, and they're very flighty on the ground. Really impressed with Nathan Jeffries in the mini sprint. Is that a path forward as well? Make the an opportunity for the mini sprints to come down from the North Island and get in there and really boost the field. There's not much between those two classes.
So at the end of the Clay Cup, it was, of course, Liam Astle winning the feature, with second place going to Caden Barker and last year's winner Jaden Fraser in third as well. Now we get to the last two nights, was the V6 Wingless Rumble, sponsored by Smith Racing. It's become quite the staple event in the Ruapuna calendar now, with this year's edition boasting just over 20 entries. There was heartbreak for points leader and local favourite Kane Jemmett on that second night there, who suffered damage in a heat race and wasn't able to make it back out, really giving those out of towners a shot at victory there.
Yeah, the door was sort of left a bit open for them, wasn't it? And there's something about the North Island guys. They do seem to come down here maybe a little more battle-hardened than our local guys, which is perhaps sort of reflected by the numbers that there are up north, the number of tracks that do it, whereas down here, it's sort of like an Invercargill, Ruapuna, Cromwell type thing. But yeah, and Shooter Hawkins, I thought this was Shooter's big opportunity, to sort of bang that flag up onto the mast, but you just cannot take it away from the North Island contingent.
A lot of bad luck happening for all of our local favourites, unfortunately, but there was a great heat race performance there from Blair Smith on Saturday too, with the track seeming to suit his style perfectly out the front there. But come feature time, it was relatively drama-free, just a few cautions here and there, but the win went to Laurie Peterson, second place Danny Livingston, and third Billy Griffiths. AJ, you cannot deny how well Laurie was driving all week either. He picked up some heat wins and was really put himself in the right place come feature time.
Yeah, he was consistently making forward movement, wasn't he? And that's something that we picked up really early, was that he was the one guy that seemed to be able to chance his arm and actually take the opportunities. And so, in the past it's been Luke McClymont that's driven like that. But yeah, Laurie, he was a standout performer.
The first person not named Luke to ever win the Rumble as well. So great achievement there for Laurie. And I know that those guys were pretty stoked to finish on the podium there as well. There was a lot of trying guys, and we know that Danny had a pretty rough season as well with that massive crash at Ruapuna earlier. So to see them rebound and pick up second place was great as well. Moving on to the midget class, Friday night was the first ever Rocky 23 in memory of Gordon Roxburgh. It was Ben Morgan who set quick time by a healthy margin, but it was Jeremy Webb at the end of the night claiming victory, with a second going to Luke McClymont and third Alec Inslee. AJ, a pretty cool event, unique 23-lap feature race, and it was awesome to see the South Island Midget Club get to put this on.
A great addition to Speedweek, and that's the thing, sort of like these mix and match races for the number of laps for the car number that the guy had. I think they're a great way of putting the memory of some great competitors up there, the likes of the Rhinestone 17, and now we've got the Rocky 23. And there was a number of people that made comments about the midget car field, no Pickens, no Mosen, Buckley only here for one show, and Fabish here for one show sort of thing. But I think across the board, the racing was better because it was so hardly fought between every one of those guys. It was a very tight pack, and I really, really enjoyed it. And our guys were up to the task with the next tier of young guys that are really coming through from up north.
Night 2 of the Speed Week was the Eliminator for the second time. We started this event last year, a pretty unique format once again, AJ, these guys having to really kind of decide where they want to start in the feature and race their way forward without being eliminated. The Eliminator feature was taken very literally, however, and many of the guys ended up in crashes and basically eliminating themselves, which made for 5 cars to only finish the feature in the end, but there was still plenty of good racing throughout.
Yeah, self-elimination seemed to be the name of the game, didn't it? And once again, the mix and match format, just something a little bit different. And that's something Ruapuna is starting to do very well consistently right across the board, is add some variation to it and just sort of moving away from the old, 2 heats in a feature. Let's throw a little bit of spice in there. And the Eliminator, let's give it another year because I thought it was darn good.
And there was a massive crash towards the end for Regan Tyler, which actually ended the race early, but Jeremy Webb had raced his way from the back all the way to the front to claim his second win of the week. Second place went to Alec Inslee and third place Luke McClymont. Same podium, slightly different order, but Jeremy Webb still on top, AJ.
I think when you boil down the season, Jeremy Webb has been the competitor of the season. He dominated the TQs when he needed to. It was a bit of a slow start, and then they parked the TQ up after another national title, and he showed that he is right at the top when it comes to the midget cars. Certainly, in the South Island, and also, very ready to take on all comers.
Thursday night was then the qualifying heats for the Graham Hill Roofing Midget Gold Cup. And by the end of the night, it was Regan Tyler who had ended up claiming the high point man after a complete rebuild on that car. A massive effort by those guys and Kieran Harris to get that thing cut up, turned around, back straight again, and all 4 wheels on the ground, and winning on the track as well with some serious pace. Moving on to Saturday, there was a nice smooth track which allowed for plenty of slide jobs, but it was another Jeremy Webb masterclass to complete his sweep of Speed Week features that night, winning his first Gold Cup, AJ. What an incredible performance on every single feature that week for Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at it, 3 different racetracks as well. He showed that he can do it in the slick. He showed he can do it in the, humps and lumps sort of stuff. And he should be very well satisfied. And I think one of the real advantages that he has got is that crew, a bunch of guys led by his dad, who was a very good speedway racer, and Dick Webb. And, some of these guys have been with Jeremy pretty much all his TQ career. And with that, it just brings a knowledge, and a big part of Speedway is not only setting up the car, but setting up the driver, those little bits of self-belief, sort of seeing things on the track that they can pass on, seeing what some rivals are doing. And J-Dub's, sort of the spare parts department includes plenty of guys that are walking there in, trousers and shirts, because they're a smart team.
It was Regan Tyler claimed his first midget podium by running second that night as well. Not bad for a couple of TQ guys either, who finished 1-2 at the title earlier this season at Ruapuna. And Luke McClymont ended his Speed Week with another podium to complete his podium sweep of the week as well. So lots of consistency going on in the midget class throughout a massive field of them too. There was just over 20 of them almost every night, I believe. So a massive effort by all of those guys. The sprint cars then got off to a flying start. Moving back to Friday night, they contested the all-new Speedweek shootout, which was all-American style qualifying and heat race inverts as well. But one of the best races of the season came out of this night with that dash between Jamie Duff and Joel Myers Jr., AJ.
You could travel around the USA for a month and go to, 20-something race meetings and not see a race as good as that. That was a stunning performance, and so good that it sort of boiled down to be between two very good South Island drivers, and both of them have got more than a smattering of fans out there in the crowd. So there's lots of noise, lots of energy, and two guys who do get on very well. But man, do they love beating each other. So yeah, it was a brilliant race.
A nice fierce rivalry between the two of them on track. And it was Conor Rangi who finally returned to victory lane at Ruapuna Speedway in the feature that night. The Daltons crowd as loud as ever up in the VIP booth. I can hear them from the infield, AJ. They're just so supportive of Conor and Jonathan too, of course. But with Conor finally being able to have a little bit of weight lifted off his shoulders and return to victory lane was a massive effort for them.
Yeah, it was, and you did right about the Daltons' support. It goes a whole lot further than helping pay some of the bills, and so that gives a driver the confidence, gives the backing and that energy. It flows over into the crowd too. There's lots of noise there, and while Joel Myers he struck some issues in that heat race, in the feature, I don't think anyone would deny that Conor Rangi absolutely deserved that feature race. He put on a whale of a drive.
For sure, and then it was second place going to Jamie Duff and third place Joel Myers Jr. Sprint cars were off to a very strong start. Moving on to Saturday night was different track conditions yet again, which proved a new challenge for them, but it was the Salute to Goody sponsored by Avon Insurance. We've reverted back to the original format of here of the fastest off the back for the Salute to Goody, and it was Bailey Clive who ended up leading 15 or so laps there at the start of that feature. What an amazing effort for those boys. We know that they've had a pretty rough season. They've travelled up and down. They've tried everything. They've thrown the toolbox at that car. And finally, they managed to kind of lead some laps and a real confidence boost for Bailey.
Yeah, I've never actually been a big fan of the highest points off the back for sprint cars because there just seems to be a little less room. But I'm sold on it now simply by seeing a guy like Bailey Clive. That there made their season for them. And it's not as though he had it handed to him because, man, he had to hustle. He was driving so well. And to lead, 3/4 of that race, great effort for him. And maybe we need to come up with a bit more lap money next year. And Bailey could have been even happier. But, it is an evener. And it gives a lot of people, a chance that maybe they wouldn't have had if they were starting from grid 7 and so on. So, yeah, it did make the race. And it was one of the highlights of the whole Speed Week for me.
Joel Myers Jr. did start off the back of that feature, raced his way all the way to the front and was able to get around Bailey in a pretty textbook pass as well. Second place ended up being Conor Rangi and third place Jonathan Allard. There's lots of racing going on throughout the night and it was fantastic to see somebody, as AJ just alluded to there, somebody like Bailey get to lead laps, and especially after some of the trying seasons that they've had this year, and obviously it's been pretty tough on them, and to be able to reward guys like that with an opportunity to lead a race is a massive effort, and it does go a long way. But the week did then continue into night 1 of the R&R Duff Gold Cup on Thursday night, where the heat races really ramped up the intensity. But the night ended with a 20-lap feature where Jamie Duff finally returned to victory lane. AJ, lots going on Thursday night. The heat races were pretty chaotic there, and then we had Stephen Taylor's massive crash in that feature as well that caused a little bit of a hold up as they cleaned that up, and then we had to get the race re-going again. But Jamie was in fine form all night.
You did sense that, sort of the carrot of the Gold Cup does ramp things up. But, 23 times that's been contested now. That event's got history, it's got the prestige, and the guys want it. And they want to lay a big platform that they can build off by getting as far up the field or as close to the front as they can for the big feature race that pays some pretty darn good money. So it was battle stations for sure. The Taylor accident was pretty frightening and totally destroyed the car. But they're the sort of things that do happen in speedway racing, unfortunately. Stephen was certainly battered and bruised out of that effort.
We did obviously not see Stephen return for Saturday night, so it was pretty clear that he was missing from the field, AJ. He does add a lot of oomph to the field and obviously that pace as well, but there was still plenty of others that were at the top of their game ready to contest, with Matthew Levisage being the high point man after that night one there as well. But on Saturday night for the big one, the R&R Duff Gold Cup feature race, you had Dylan Forsey, who won a heat race early in the night, which put him to start on the pole of such a prestigious race. AJ, I know that that meant a lot to him.
Yeah, a real reward, wasn't it? And for the likes of himself and Matthew Levisage, give those guys an opportunity. Boy, they are hard to pull back. So, yeah, that could have been very much the highlight for Dylan, was, starting right up the front in what is the granddaddy of New Zealand sprint car races. So, all credit to them. They've battled away and they've worked really hard all season long.
And he is, of course, part of that young group that is coming through now. So cool to see him improving every night that they get more laps in the 17 sprint car. Joel Myers Jr. had a giant lead in the feature before a yellow came out, eliminating that completely, but there was still no denying how quick he was, how comfortable he was. He was able to get around lap traffic very quickly and make some great pace there all throughout that feature race. Second place ended up being Jamie Duff and third place Matthew Levisage. A nice result there for the South Island boys. We saw them be very obviously competitive throughout the whole night, with Jamie picking up that win as well on Thursday, but still Joel returning to victory lane to pick up back-to-back Gold Cups.
Yeah, and he certainly deserved it too. The performance that has come out of the Daniel Anderson racing team this year has been just exceptional. I think what is really starting to establish itself now is the next breed of drivers coming through. Sort of like Jonathan Allard, I'm not too sure how many more seasons JA will have in them. Likely Jamie Larson. He's been around an awful long time, but then you get the Zachary Sockholes and the Stephen Taylors and Ben Matthews. They're only young guys and they make the big trek down and they add so much to the Gold Cup or to any event at Ruapuna. And our guys are also showing how tough they are. And I do think that the Hydrolink More of the Wings is really preparing them for that intensity. And what's generated that? The Daniel Anderson racing team. Before that, the War of the Wings was competitive. Now it's bloody hard. And a lot of people up and down the country have taken a bit of notice that all of a sudden the South Island guys are ultra competitive, not only on their own patch, but up north they were pretty competitive as well. They didn't really stand out all the time, but they weren't languishing right at the back of the pack.
A few notes on a couple of the drivers you just mentioned there. Ben Matthews picked up the harder Charger, which was kindly sponsored on the night. He ran from 14th to 4th in that Gold Cup feature, and Jamie Larson was awarded Best Presented Sprint Car and Crew as well. So nice to have a few promotional awards to throw in there at the podium presentation as well. But all of this was, of course, also included by our two fireworks shows that happened on both Saturdays, and they were kindly sponsored by K&T Drainage and Value Cars Warehouse. What a massive speed week, AJ. Once again, 4 meetings, so many competitors, so many races and lots on the lines, but I think that overall the atmosphere and the vibe at the end of the week was still right there, and we had the weather on our side this year.
Yeah, we did, and let's hope that we can make it like a unique Ruapuna type event, something that's going to be the gathering of the clan for all the classes, dangle the carrot and watch them all come and have a go at it. Scheduling is pretty tough in the speedway world these days, but if we can continue with the momentum and the building up of Speed Week, it'll be the other tracks that won't want to run against it. And we were really lucky to get some good support from up and down the country. They came from Auckland right down to Invercargill with the wingless cars and Jacob McIntyre and so on. And 4 nights of racing in 8 days. Boy, there was a few people in the recovery position on Sunday, and yet there was a bunch of people that then had to hit the highways and byways and go back home.
Lots obviously goes into making these events possible, so thank you to all of our volunteers and sponsors and staff and everybody involved in Ruapuna Speedway for helping us pull off yet another Speed Week as well. But since this is our season-ending show, we do, of course, not have a share and win to give away tonight. But there was an RJPTV giveaway that was running over the course of Speedweek to go into the draw to win one of these two hats here. Both have been signed. One has been signed by the Sprint Car podium and one has been signed by the Midget podium, both from their Gold Cup races on Saturday night. To go into the draw to pick one of these up, all you had to do was buy one of the live streams over the 4 nights. The team at RJPTV will be in touch with you to collect your prize. So congratulations to those guys, and thank you for supporting our live stream providers as well. But with the winter break commencing now, there is also going to be no Ranch Bar and Grill preview of the week this episode, but I do just want to take the time to also thank the team at the Ranch Bar and Grill for their support of Methanol Madness this year, as well as our team behind the camera, RJPTV, who helped produce the show as well. None of this would really happen without those two parties as well. So it's great to have the support of so many people all across our Speedway world. But just like that, that's another season of Methanol Madness complete, AJ. What a massive season overall it's been to cover at Ruapuna.
Yeah, and in some ways we're pretty happy to be at the end of the season, but in about 3 weeks' time, I reckon we'll be pining for the dirt and the noise and so on, and looking forward to it. So, 25, 26, bring it on.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the winter break as well before we kick off into next season. But while we are in this winter break, make sure you're following along on our social media pages at Ruapuna Speedway to keep up to date with any updates that we share until we get to go racing again. So until next season, keep your foot up it.